We spend so much of our lives exhausted. We constantly strive to make the right choices, hit our goals, and achieve some form of success. Yet the harder we try to grasp that perfect outcome, the more we seem to be weighed down by anxiety rather than peace. The Buddhist monk Master Xuanhua once proposed a paradox that flips our normal understanding of morality on its head. He said that if a righteous person practices a flawed path, that path becomes righteous. But if a flawed person practices a righteous path, that right path becomes flawed. The difference lies in whether our heart is fixed on a reward. When we perform an act while secretly calculating what we'll get out of it, or what we might lose, the action changes. It is no longer about the deed itself, but about the greed or fear driving it. To see what this looks like in practice, consider the story of an old master archer and his ambitious young student. To teach a final lesson, the master leads his pupil up a mountain, stopping only when they reach the precipice of a dizzyingly steep, bottomless abyss. The mentor steps right up to the crumbling edge. Without a trace of hesitation, he calmly raises his bow, draws the string, and releases an arrow into the empty mist. Then he hands the bow to his student. The young man has the technical skill to hit any target, but as he looks down the sheer drop, his knees shake. His hands tremble so violently he can't even lock the arrow into place. He is paralyzed by the fear of falling. The master explains the problem. The young man's mind is fractured into two separate pieces. One piece wants to execute the perfect shot to prove his skill, while the other piece is consumed by the fear of plunging to his death. When we approach any task with a mind divided by fear or craving, the action itself is corrupted. True mastery requires total presence, where there is only the bow, the arrow, and the target, with no ego left over to worry about the result. This division doesn't just stay inside our heads, it builds the world we live in. We often think of our secret shortcuts as invisible, but every intention leaves a footprint on the reality we eventually inherit. Look at the story of the master carpenter. He spent decades crafting magnificent, sturdy homes for his community. But as he prepared for retirement, his boss asked him to build one last house. Because he knew it was his final job, he let his mind cloud over with laziness. He bought cheap timber, skipped his usual precise measurements, and slapped together walls that he knew would eventually crack. When the shoddy structure was finally finished, the boss smiled, walked over, and handed the carpenter the front door keys. The house was a surprise retirement gift. He realized in an instant that he had built a trap for himself. Even when performing an outwardly productive task like building a home, a selfish intention creates a flawed reality. We ultimately have to live inside the world our intentions construct. This relationship between cause and effect is precise. When we try to tilt the scales in our favor through deceit, we usually find the scale tilting back exactly where we least expect it. Look at this balancing scale. Imagine it tracking the trades of a greedy grocer named Govind. For years, Govind had been secretly hollowing out his wheats, shortchanging his customers on every block of wheat he sold. Govind eventually noticed the butter he bought from Ramu seemed light, and furiously accused him of cheating. The farmer calmly explained he couldn't afford metal weights, so he simply used Govind's exact bag of wheat on the scale to measure out the butter. The grocer's own deceit had bounced back to him, measured to the exact gram. Holding on to doubts about this connection between our actions and their consequences is like tying a heavy stone to your feet. The loop is inescapable, quietly operating behind every interaction we have. If our minds are so easily divided by expectation, and every selfish intention is returned to us, how do we navigate this reality and find some peace? There was once a novice monk who felt deeply frustrated. He had spent 7 strict years following the rules, meditating and chanting, yet he felt no closer to spiritual clarity than the day he started. Seeing his frustration, his master led him down to a dark, forgotten storeroom. He handed the young monk a soft cloth and pointed to a filthy, heavily rusted disc leaning against the wall, asking him to clean it. The monk sat for weeks, painstakingly scrubbing away the hardened grime. Slowly, the thick layer of rust gave way, revealing an ancient bronze mirror beneath, its surface so clean it reflected the room perfectly. The master stepped into the room and asked a simple question. Did the act of wiping create the mirror? Of course not. The mirror's ability to reflect existed independently of the dirt that covered it. Your mind works exactly the same way. The core of who you are is already whole and capable of perfect clarity. You don't achieve mastery by trying to force a specific outcome. You get there by simply wiping away the dust of your own cravings and fears. Whatever task you sit down to do today, try doing it with total presence, completely detached from the expectation of a reward. Learning to let go of the dust is the only way to reveal the perfect clarity that was there all along.